I'm Anna Reed. I'm a Senior Program Development and Research Associate at APA, and I'm here with Vasudha Pinnamaraju, the Executive Director of the McLean County Regional Planning Commission. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Anna.
So your plan, Bring It On Bloomington, which has an exclamation point in the title, which I think is great, was recently recognized with the silver level recognition through the Comprehensive Plan Standards pilot program. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about Bring It On Bloomington.
Absolutely.
So if you wanted to start by just providing us a little bit of context about Bloomington and the community.
Absolutely. So McLean County Regional Planning Commission is a MPO and a regional planning agency for Bloomington-Normal and McLean County. Bloomington and Normal are twin cities with a combined population of about 125,000 people. Bloomington 2010 census is at 77,000 population. Overall, to describe our community in a fast and furious way, I would say it was growing, affluent, educated community, if you just look at the median numbers. Bloomington's average growth has been from 90 to 2000, 2000 to 2010. Growth has been in double digits from decade to decade. So it's been a growing community. So if you, by the time of the comprehensive plan in 2013 is when we embarked on this project. That was the first time when the population growth has started to slow down a little bit. But overall, Bloomington-Normal is in central Illinois, well connected by transportation systems, 2.5 hours from Chicago, St. Louis, and Indianapolis. Has a regional airport. So economic development has not been an issue for a community in the past, although that's changing now.
And can you talk about some of the sort of key priorities and challenges, which you kind of touched on some of those, but that you were looking at going into the comprehensive planning process?
Yeah, so to kind of give you a brief background on comprehensive planning in Bloomington, prior to Bring It On Bloomington plan, the previous plan, led again by Regional Planning Commission, was in 2005. At that time, like many plans during that time, it was very much systems oriented. We did a great job with housing, transportation systems, infrastructure systems, but it was not people oriented. So when we embarked on this project, City of Bloomington, who was our client, made it extremely clear that they want a plan focused on community outreach, which again, as a planner, that's something that you want to see buy-in from city council and management. So that gave us the power that we need to really kind of go out and engage the community at a level like we've not done before. That process was an absolutely enlightening and learning experience and informed the plan for the rest of the process like it should. And I think a few things that I would like to point out here is when we first started approaching the community, there was a level of suspicion. People didn't want to really talk to us. We tried all different avenues, but most importantly, what I think worked best for us at the end, we reached over 6,000 people. For the most part, majority of them probably didn't even fill out a survey, but really the sentiment of talking to them and knowing where they stand was extremely important. We attended neighborhood block parties, picnics. We were almost a pest, I guess, to that degree. But we also worked with our partners. Some of our partners, like YWCAs and local nonprofit organizations who have established relationships with their clientele, we worked through them. We wanted to make sure that we established a level of trust, and given the time frame, we just didn't have enough time to really establish that level of trust. So we worked with our partners to help us through that. And something that we came across quite a bit is people wanted to know what next. You now are seeking this input. It is what you want to know, but I really would like to know when I can hear back from you.
So I guess to build on that, you worked hard to get that community input and that buy-in. How has that led to support for implementation, or how's that impacted the implementation process?
Absolutely. So this is the first plan that really touched on some key issues that comprehensive plans in the past did not touch on. And one of the key issue in Bloomington-Normal is, in Bloomington particularly, is a landlocked school district. And some of the older neighborhoods felt that was an issue, perceived or real. People are talking about schools to move into these older historic neighborhoods that we want to preserve. So it was like this chicken and egg situation. And in 70s, it was very political. There was a referendum to merge the school districts that did not pass. And now we have what we have. The school district was extremely engaged in this process, and we were able to really address the education-related issues that comp plans in the past did not address, and probably are much more relevant in Bloomington than maybe any other community. Same applies to health, arts and culture, that includes historic preservation. So I think if you look at Bloomington's priorities, it's much more, it's slightly different than what it has been from a systems perspective. And how did that then lead to implementation? Another brief background on Bloomington is its headquarters for State Farm. And one of the things I think people get there is numbers, data and numbers. So we definitely wanted to back this information about people wanting to redevelop our existing older historic neighborhoods. And we wanted to show how the city's investment in new developments is either positively or negatively impacting these. And so we substantiated our community outreach and existing conditions analysis with fiscal impact analysis to show city's investment and how it's impacting this. All of these led to creation of a land use plan that's tiered approach, tier 1 being infill and redevelopment, tier 2 which is based on infrastructure, prioritizing areas with existing infrastructure services, and as the tier went up, it's additional infrastructure that requires a rate of return study, additional studies that the city needs to look at.
So in that answer, you touched on a couple of the principles that the plan scored really well on, including the interwoven equity principle with the school district, the healthy communities, and then also the livable built environment. And so going back to these sort of tiers and how those are included in your goals and policies, can you talk a little bit more about what exactly those look like, where they sort of appear in the community in the map? Is it sort of the standard infill in the core, or is it?
No, so infill in the core is definitely, there are some infill areas in the core, but overall tier 1 is any areas that have already been annexed to the city limits, partly, and if they're available for redevelop, if they're currently underutilized or if it's vacant, we prioritize those as tier 1 because whether we like it or not, now it's annexed. Yes, it may still be technically contributing to sprawl, but once you've annexed, it's the city's responsibility now to maintain those. So the reasoning again behind that is let's maintain what we have in good condition, which was a big priority that came up during the public outreach process. So tier 2 would then be areas that were developed with infrastructure but are not annexed. Some of them may be annexed but need additional infrastructure. So we looked at some of those priorities as well.
Great. And you're also working on the update for the plan for Normal as well?
Correct, yes.
And can you talk a little bit about that and maybe how the feedback you got in the standards has influenced that?
Yeah, so definitely. One of the feedback that we have received from Sustainable Places effort in Bloomington is integration with capital investment plan. And that's something that we are trying to incorporate more in Town of Normal's plan. Frankly, that's still an area of, there is still a lot to learn because these two are two major processes, and within a 24-month time period, we are still trying to see how we can accommodate that. But I think sustaining places definitely was one of those pilot projects. When we embarked on Bloomington's comprehensive plan, we didn't have a standard to follow. By the time the standards came out, it was more towards the end of the project. So it was throughout development of this project, there was, so for example, arts and culture was a big priority identified by the community. Health was a big priority identified by the community. APA had many resources available, so we consulted APA's website. We consulted with planning advisory services quite a bit. So we've used a lot of technical resources through APA. So when these standards came out, it was really refreshing to see, how did we do? Like, on national standards, how did this plan really score? So from that perspective, it was very nice to know that overall, the feedback that we received from the community also bode well with the national standards.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you.